Okay, so we're about to begin all the proceedings. I should have said, my name's James McVeigh. I'm the Head of Marketing and Innovation for Festivals Edinburgh. And this, our 70th anniversary year, we've been doing lots of experiments on tech as well, but one of the things we have to do is we've always got to keep an eye on what's happening in the city, and actually what's happening in the world. You mentioned TUI, Robin. There's actually quite a few other things which I want you to be tweeting about throughout the whole day. You'll hear lots of things, but 3 developments that I've been quite interested in the last period have been things like this, which is in the TUI development. It's a company called Surprise Me. You turn up at an airport and you're given a scratch card based on some of your preferences that you'll have suggested years in advance, and that you'll scratch the card and that will dictate where you go on holiday. Okay, Surprise Me. EasyJet in Barcelona have launched Sneak Airs, shoes that vibrate according to the GPS in your phone, according to your destination, giving you directions. Your right foot will vibrate, and you'll go right. Okay? I'm not sure if it dictates whether Barcelona go independent or not, but these are developments that are happening all around us. And this one in particular caught my eye just a couple of days ago. It's a new Samsung app that will be launched in December, which the phone will dictate when you need downtime, and it'll switch itself off. Okay? Thrive. This is interesting. There's this sense that people are using it too much, so now they're giving the phone power to switch itself off. But they'll also communicate that via social media. So all your friends will know when you're off. So it's as if you're boasting that you're offline. It's very strange. Anyway, so there's lots of these things happening. And one of the things that links them all is data. And so our first speakers are going to look at the importance and impact of data for tourism. So I'm going to ask our colleagues from the Institute of Future Cities, Janette and John, to join us on stage. And Janette, you're going to begin, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm glad you can see me over the podium because I'm not that tall. My name's Janette Hughs, and I'm delighted to be here today for a number of different reasons. Firstly, I love Edinburgh. Secondly, what a great venue to be in. And thirdly, I love travelling, and I'm going to weave some stories about my travels through this presentation. Let me grab the... Excellent, it works. So the institute that I represent at the University of Strathclyde is the Institute of Future Cities. And at that institute, we are set up to look 5, 10, 20 years into the future to say what are cities going to look like, who's going to be living in cities. There's a big drive to what we call urbanisation in cities, so more and more people will actually live in cities around the world. It'll move from 50% to 70% in the next 30 years, and that's why we're interested in it. And the other thing is city travel is only becoming bigger year on year, and that is another reason why the Institute of Future Cities is particularly interested in what we call smart tourism. So what is smart tourism? Future cities and smart cities is a name that's kind of interweaved. But what we realise is the tourist, the traveller, is becoming smarter. And we have to accommodate and actually try to meet their expectations, but ultimately try to exceed their expectations by using the data and information that we have. So I'm going to take you through a kind of potted journey of maybe where travels came from, because looking into the future is never easy. And I can definitely confirm that when I look back 20 years. 20 years ago, I just finished my first degree in Glasgow in design, and I decided that I was going to have a gap year of about 18 months. So from that, I went and bought a map and I pinned it up on my wall. I went and bought some Lonely Planet books. I went to the library and thought, right, where am I going to go? What am I going to visit? I went into travel agents like STA Travel and had discussions about, well, where can you go? Where's the best flights? How much money will it cost? So that experience for me of booking travel 20 years ago, as we can see, is very different from today. When I started travelling, I went to most continents around the world, and I logged my travels and my experiences very personally in a journal that I wrote diligently every day, and I must go back and read some of the things I wrote. And to reflect on that, I took an SLR camera and I took photos, and I got those photos printed. And I can see in the audience, some of you will recognise this kind of booking experience. And some of you might be thinking, really, is that how you had to book travel 20 years ago and experience travel? That was me travelling around the world, and the biggest difference that I'd like to point out is the communication that I had, the information that I got access to before I stepped on that flight was pretty minimal. And the communication I had with friends and family back home was pretty much writing letters, postcards, and going to the good old-fashioned phone box. For some of you, you might not have recognise that, but that is a phone box on the right-hand side. And every couple of months I would phone home and say, yes, I'm still alive, and nobody would really know where I am, where I was in the world. So, I mean, I make the point kind of flippantly, but in 20 years, the travel industry, from a digital point of view, has came miles. And actually, who would have imagined what we'd be doing in today and actually experiencing travel and booking travel? We now dream about travel and are influenced and inspired, about 50% of us are, about online. So we look online for the inspiration. It's no longer probably found in books. We act as our own travel agents, so we book our travel ourselves, as we all will do, probably from our sofas with a glass of wine next to us and a rainy sunny night and sunny evening or rainy evening in Glasgow. And we experience it in real time with people that aren't even anywhere near us. Now, I know that I'm kind of speaking to the converted, but what it means to reflect on where we've came 20 years ago would be unimaginable if anybody had asked anybody in 1997 how we were going to travel and experience that. And what's enabled that to happen is digital. And it's not just one channel, as people used to think. The websites were the only way forward. It's a multi-channel experience that customers are using, not only to book, but to experience and to share and to reflect their travel. You know, people are sitting on buses and booking airline tickets to Australia on their way to work. The other interesting thing is that most people are willing to use new technology to enhance their experience with travel. And I think James pointed out a lot of really exciting innovations in this area. And I'm sure sitting in the audience, you all have your own innovation to bring to the table. The other big difference I see in the last kind of 5 to 10 years, which is also hitting smart cities, is the disruptive business models that we're starting to see. So things like Airbnb, things like Uber, which is really totally disrupting the marketplace of the tourism and travel sector. In tandem with the digital smart tourism agenda, what's going on in cities, I think, is important for you to note. There is a massive drive internationally, and some of you will probably be aware of it, called smart cities. All around the world, including Edinburgh and the 7 cities in Glasgow, have smart city agendas and initiatives. And what that will start to allow people to do is actually connect anywhere to anything. So you'll hear about things like the Internet of Things and a lot more sensors being used, which will really enable the tourism industry to, again, take that leap forward. So what is a smart city? It's about integration. And I think even tourism as much as you have been doing really well in the last 20 years, there's still silos sitting, and that integration maybe isn't as integrated as you would like. It's really about smart data, and I think the important aspect of all industries working in cities is actually trying to link that data up. And John, my colleague from Strathclyde, is going to talk a wee bit more about actually how you can use that data. I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but I want to make the point that successful cities probably mirror some of the important aspects of smart destinations. They need to be easy, distinctive, and delightful. And the customer is king, but they expect things faster, they expect you to know them, and they expect to be surprised by you as well. So what I'd like to end with, before John comes up and presents the Predictive Tourism project, is that it's not just about gathering the data, it's about what you do with that data and turn that into insight and action. Thank you.
My name is John Wilson. I'm from Department of Computer Information Sciences at the University of Strathclyde. And the work I'm going to talk to you about was done by myself in conjunction with colleague Mark, who can't be here today. And this project was to do with the use of data in integrating collections of information from different sources to provide some sort of insight into the way in which you could use that data to somehow predict something that was useful to the future. Now, the video's heading off a little bit slowly, so we're going to kind of run out of things to say for the video. But basically, this project, at the top of this project is Glasgow City Marketing Bureau, who had an idea of using data to help the tourist industry in Glasgow. And they got funding from the data science people, and together with those resources, plus data from STR, who were doing collecting hotel data, and also from Skyscanner, who are collecting flight data, particularly data for flights into Edinburgh and Glasgow, and put that together and predict something useful, right? And this was where we were kind of brought into it. So we've got flight data, and we've got hotel data. And so basically the structure of the project looks like this, okay? So at the top of the tree, we've got City Marketing Bureau and the Data Lab. We've got STR, who have the data about hotels. We've got Skyscanner, who have data about the searches that people have done for flights. And then we've got us, who have got the ability to try to predict something from that data. And so basically, this is the kind of starting point. Now, there is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, lots and lots of tourism data about easily accessible over the internet. This is Office of National Statistics, and it shows the development of visitor to the UK over the period 2006 to 2015. And that's really interesting. You can see kind of what's happened to that pattern. This is a recent view of the data in that website. And of course, the thing that strikes you immediately is, okay, it's really interesting from a historical point of view, but the most up-to-date data is 2015, which, that was quite a long time ago. If what you're trying to do is see what's happening now, or even better still, in the next few months, then that data's interesting. And you can see there's a kind of upward trend. But, where does it go to? You don't really know. And this was the kind of context that we used for this talk. We were looking around for something to do. And this is a quote from a website, hotelonline.com, which talks about the remuneration of hotel managers. And you need to kind of think a little bit about the text. So I've kind of highlighted the important bits, right? The first thing that should hit you is that it's about an incentive program for lodging managers. And so basically there is an incentive involved. There's bonus, okay? So how do they get the bonus? Well, they get the bonus if they've got, if they meet 100% of last year's income or greater, okay? So basically there's a bonus available if they're able to increase income in a particular hotel. So what they need to know is basically what's going to happen over the next few months to know whether they're likely to meet that bonus or whether they're not likely to meet their bonus and need to be able to take some action. And you need kind of 2 or 3 months in order to make that sort of change. So basically what we're looking at here is something which would help hotel managers focus on the times that were likely to be quiet and the times that were likely to be busy by comparison with last year. Okay, now that's a little bit tricky because it's not just quiet or busy, because quiet and busy happens at fairly predictable times. It's quiet and busy by comparison with last year. So this is what we set out to try to predict. This is the data. Okay, now the data came from essentially 2 different places. The first thing was flight search logs. Now these pretty much everybody in this room, if you haven't used Skyscanner, you definitely have used something else. And you know that the way that you use it varies. Sometimes you're really looking for a particular flight to a particular destination. Sometimes you want to know whether there is a flight to a destination, or you don't care where you go, you just want to see the sun for a bit. So there are all sorts of different ways of using this. Now, that's natural, that's the way in which people work. But of course, from a data point of view, it's a real mess because you're able to collect these searches. So these are the details of searches that people made, and we got the details of searches that everybody made wanting to fly in or out of Glasgow for essentially a 2-year period. Okay? There were 200 million of those, right? There's quite a lot of data involved in that. And what does it mean? Well, you know, there's lots of interesting behavior in there. Some people are using that to book their flights. Some people are just kind of doodling away an evening looking at where might be nice to go. Basically, it's good data, but it's big and it contains a lot of different kinds of things in it. So this was one set of data that we had. Another set of data that we had was hotel forward bookings, and this came from STR. And essentially, this is the record of for each month. Okay, so here we are in October now, right? So there would be a prediction. There would be a record of the percentage of hotels which had been the percentage occupancy for November this year, the percentage occupancy for December this year. Okay, that's the 1st of November, the 2nd of November, the 3rd of November, and so on. You can appreciate you're looking at a very small corner of the data here. Okay? Then we've got a record of what's actually happened. So that gives you a little kind of insight into the future. It's not a great insight, but it's a bit of insight into the future. Then what we've got here is we've got a record of what actually happened. And again, this data ran over a period of about 2 years. And you can see that it's saying, okay, for 2016, 1st of November, the occupancy, that's the number of rooms that were booked in hotels. This is Glasgow data, by the way, okay? The number of rooms that were booked in hotels in Glasgow. This is the number of people that were sleeping in those hotels, the percentage of sleepers in those hotels. Now, these numbers vary, and I've got another slide in a moment which kind of shows the difference between them. But as far as predicting what's going to happen to revenue is concerned, the important thing is this, the occupancy, because that's for a hotelier where the revenue comes from, not so much the sleepers. Okay, so we've got a record of what happened in the past. And then we've got stuff about events. Now, the event data also came from STR, and you can see that basically it's a record of what is going to happen. Okay, so these are events in November this year, and they are categorized to some extent, and there is some detail. Again, this information you would expect to have some influence on hotel occupancy. The information is fairly kind of loose in that there is there is a little kind of estimate of the effect. So a Rangers football match might have a big impact on the need for hotel rooms in Glasgow, whereas some of these others may not. Okay, so this is the input data, and this is what we're trying to predict. Okay, now we're trying to predict occupancy, which is the important one, and sleepers, which is the less important one. And we're trying to predict what's going to happen on the 1st of November, the 2nd of November, the 3rd of November. Now, that value there needs to be compared with this value here, okay? Because, of course, as you go through the years, the days slip, and you don't want to be comparing, say, a Saturday with a Friday, because the occupancy will be different, or a Friday with a Thursday. So you've got to kind of shuffle it a little bit. So that is shown yellow there, because that is down for the same period there. But these two are blue here, okay, because they are either up in the case of that one, or level in the case of that one. And don't forget, we're interested in stable or up. We're not interested in down, okay? So this is what we're trying to predict. This is what the data looks like, okay? There's all sorts of stuff in here. The way in which that data is collected, what Skyscanner does is it puts default dates in if you don't put dates in. And of course, if you just press search, then it searches for those default dates, even though you had no intention of traveling that day. You get this kind of heartbeat pattern. You get a peak on the 1st of every month, okay, of people looking for flights. This is the hotel data, and again, you get a kind of heartbeat pattern in that, where occupancy varies depending on the day of the week on a fairly regular basis. This is events. Events was much harder to quantify, and basically what we did was just try a fairly arbitrary application of quantification to different kinds of events. And you can see this is over a 2-year period. This is sort of moderately stable. Skyscanner's growing over that period, okay, so there's variability there. That's okay, that's fairly stable. This, you can see it was done fairly assiduously over that period, but then it kind of got a bit more patchy down towards the end. So there is data, but it's not great. This is the pattern of sleepers and hotel occupancy, okay? So here we've got room occupancy, and you can see this is the number of rooms that hotel is selling, and this is sort of skewed to that side. This is the number of sleepers in those rooms, and you can see that that's nice and evenly distributed. Now, if we're trying to predict something, it's going to be a lot easier to predict that than it is to predict that, because this is all kind of bunched up. But of course, where's the value? Well, unfortunately, the value is predicting this, and much less that. So this is what we're aiming to predict. We need to look at the calendar for this, right? So we're trying to predict what's happening over the next 3 months, okay? So from now, from October, we're trying to predict what's happening in 2018. And here we are in October. We've got incomplete data, okay, going back as far as the beginning of September, and we're trying to look ahead there. We've got complete data going back here. We've got some data there, okay? So we've got some information about future bookings there. But what we're trying to do is predict this 3-month window from basically a bunch of incomplete data. This is what the structure of it looks like, okay? So here comes the flight data, here comes the hotel data. We have a predictor that's trained up on that data. We're able to deploy that predictor, and from that deployed predictor, we can generate predictions. And the predictions can show up in a number of different ways, but the idea is that this is something that's going to be used by a hotel manager. It's not much use giving a graph, okay? There's too much detail in that. What you want is an app on your phone which says, this day's going to be busy, that day you're going to have to do something to get the occupancy up. So that's basically the flow of the data, right? So this is what the accuracy looks like. Now, the one to keep your eye on is this line of graphs, this line of bars here. And this comes up to sort of around about 70, okay? So we've got a 70% accuracy in predicting whether business is going to be up or down, okay? Either down or not down, right? We've got a 70% accuracy in predicting whether business is going to be down or not down. Now, 70% is not great, but it's much better than random. This is what happens if you just use random data in this process. And you can see, well, you're down kind of around about the 40 or the 50 level. So you are actually getting some kind of a hike out of that data. As you would expect, it tails off as you go further forward. So 1 month ahead, you're okay. 2 months ahead, down a little bit. 3 months ahead, you're down quite a bit there, okay? The sleepers, which is behind, we've got slightly better accuracy there, but as I say, we're less interested in that. Right, this is what the app looks like. And essentially, this has been built to kind of summarize all of that data, which brings together the information from right, here we go, okay, which brings together the information from the Skyscanner searches, from the hotel, the future bookings, from the events, okay? And once it gets going, we'll see what the app actually looked like. It's a little bit slow on the video here, okay? So here's what the app looks like. You can see that we've got a kind of headline for each month, okay? So basically, if it's blue, you're okay, all right? You're going to actually meet or exceed occupancy by comparison with last year. If it's yellow, right, you're in trouble, okay? And the more yellow it is, then the less it's going to progress. You've got a headline value here, okay, which tells you overall what November's going to be like, what December's going to be like. It looks as if it's a bit down, and January, what January is going to be like. And then for each day, you've got some detail of, okay, so some of those days are so 15th and 16th of January, that looks pretty bad. But the previous Monday, that looks much better than last year. So it gives you a kind of visual idea of whether business is likely to be up or likely to be down, and gives you the opportunity of doing something constructive to change that. You can have this kind of thing as a smartphone app, or you can have it as a widget, okay? Now, a widget is nice because the point about an app is you have to open it. You have to do something active to be able to look at it. The nice thing about a widget is, you know this, you take it out of your pocket, and there it is. It's sitting on your phone, reminding you of whether business is likely to be up or down. We also looked at doing the same kind of thing from restaurant booking systems. And again, this will work under any circumstances where you have future bookings and a record of what happened in the past. So you could apply the same kind of thing in the area of restaurant bookings. So where does that take us? Well, is data the new oil? Well, certainly The Economist kind of thought so. We've heard a lot already about how important data is. We know that virtually everything that we do creates some kind of digital trace, and that data is valuable. We've got nice algorithms that can predict when a customer is ready to buy. We can predict what's actually going to happen to business in the hotel industry in Glasgow. The real issue is the quality of data. You could see that kind of heartbeat that you were getting in the Skyscanner data. And that was what, that accuracy level of about 70%, we need to do better. The weather forecast claims to be about 75% accurate. So we've got a little bit of way to go even to catch up with the weather forecast, and we all know how reliable that is. So basically, there is still a long way to go with this. In terms of what needs to be done, well, the data that we were talking about there is coming from two separate organizations. It's coming from Skyscanner and it's coming from STR. Now, unfortunately, it's very difficult to persuade people who have data that's relevant to a particular problem that data has value if it's put together. It's the putting together. It's the collaboration that's important. And trying to get collaboration to work into these circumstances is probably more challenging than trying to get something useful out of the data. It's the collaboration level which is the real issue. And I think that that brings me to the end of our talk. And I'll certainly be around for the rest of the morning if anyone wants to talk about any of the details of this. Okay? Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
And some of you maybe think to yourself, is that relevant to your business? But if you think about it, we're all in the business of prediction. No matter what business you're in, you're always looking at last year's figures and trends and trying to predict. What this is showing you is that there's new digital developments and how we're starting to professionalize probably the use of data. And later on, we'll also hear from a data tourism challenge that happened here in the city, trying to actually bring together that idea of collaboration around data sets. So this is very relevant, and the whole idea of smart data and smart cities is not going to go away. In fact, it's going to become more and more important for every single business. Prediction, actually, everybody does it in your walk of life. In fact, I tend to find that I try to predict and out-predict the algorithms of Expedia and hotels, because as a football fan, if I know that my team is going to be playing and they're drawing against somebody, I try and get in there early and book before the prices go up. We all try and do it. And luckily, I was very successful recently. I booked a hotel room for 4 people in Cardiff for £100 at a 4-star hotel for 2 nights. The price went up to £600 within an hour. So we were very pleased with ourselves that we beat the data, we beat the algorithm. We beat the algorithm. That's great. So thank you very much for that. And also, Janette, I was interested in your first time you went on travel, your visits, your gap year. My first holiday, some people will know this. I come from a family of 9 in Ireland, typical obviously. And our first holiday, we went to the west coast of Ireland, and it was in a little Morris Minor car, 9 children. And because I was the smallest, they used to lie me across the back windscreen. Okay? That's not smart. Okay.